Thank you, Dr. Prashant.
Thank you.
So I will be talking about various neuro-ophthalmic conditions mimicking glaucoma. I would like to start with this case of a 48-year-old male who presented to us with decreased vision in the left eye. His best corrected visual acuity on presentation was 6.6 in the right eye and 6.9 in the left eye. Pupils, color vision, and aplanation tonometry were within normal limits. Gonioscopy was and anterior segment was within normal limits. A disc evaluation showed a normal size disc in both eyes, and in the right eye, the cup disc ratio was around 0.4 CDR with a healthy neuroretinal rim. Whereas in the left eye, it was around 0.5 with focal inferior rim thinning, and the rest of the neuroretinal rim appeared to be pink. Perimetry was done, and the right eye perimetry was within normal limits, whereas in the left eye, it showed a superior arcuate defect, which was correlating with the field, with the disc. So we followed up this patient with a DVT, which showed a normal IOP all through the day within normal limits. And so we decided to keep him under close follow-up. He was followed up every 3 months with intraocular pressure, disc, and field evaluation. And the fields continued to remain stable over a period of 2 years. Ultimately, he was diagnosed to have a probable inferior coloboma in the left eye and was kept under a close follow-up. This is another case which I have borrowed from this article by Chaudhary et al. And it tells us about a 65-year-old male who presented to the authors with a gradual progressive loss of vision. Elsewhere, he was noted to have cupping in both eyes and was also, and he had also undergone a trabeculectomy in the right eye. He presented with further decrease in vision to the authors, wherein his right eye vision was counting fingers 1 meter and left eye was 6.9. Color vision was decreased in the left eye, and there was RAPD in the right eye. Here his disc evaluation, like you can see, it showed a normal size disc in both eyes with a cup disc ratio of around 0.5 to 0.6 in both eyes with a fairly normal neuroretinal rim. But an important thing to note here is that with an almost normal looking disc, there was a marked decrease in vision in the right eye. So there is something which is not correlating here. The patient underwent perimetry and he was noted to have advanced field loss in the right eye. And in the left eye, there was a temporal hemianopia respecting the vertical field. The MRI was done and it showed a suprasellar lesion, and it was suggestive of craniopharyngioma. Further in this article, the authors discussed 6 cases. All of these cases had been diagnosed elsewhere to have primary open-angle glaucoma or NPG and had undergone either a trabeculectomy or was started on AGM. And all of these 6 patients were later diagnosed to have an intracranial SOL. So it is not common. It is not uncommon for us to come across such patients in the clinic where the intraocular pressure is normal and the disc is suspicious. So how do we avoid misdiagnosis in these cases? So let us start with the basics. What do we know about glaucoma? Currently, glaucoma is defined as a progressive optic neuropathy with characteristic structural changes, wherein the intraocular pressure may be either normal or high. So basically, intraocular pressure is not a defining feature of glaucoma. So if a patient presents with disc cupping and normal IOP, we reflexly diagnose such a patient with normal tension glaucoma. But an important thing to remember is that there are various non-glaucomatous causes of disc cupping, and the patient should be thoroughly evaluated before we label it as glaucoma. Going a little into the pathophysiology of cupping. So this is a cross-section of the optic disc. And here the dotted line shows the internal limiting membrane. The blue line shows the anterior laminar surface. And this orange area is the prelaminar area, which contains mainly the axons and the capillaries. And this scleral portion of the optic disc, it contains, besides the axons, it also contains capillaries and connective tissue like astrocytes. So in cases of prelaminar cupping, there is loss of axons, basically in the prelaminar portion, and this results in a backward shifting of the internal limiting membrane as seen here. And the cup that presents to us is a shallow cup and there is pallor due to loss of axon. So this is usually seen in neuro-ophthalmic cases. Whereas in cases of glaucoma, there is extensive loss of connective tissue in the sclera, which results in the posterior shifting of the anterior laminar surface. And along with that, the internal limiting membrane also shifts posteriorly. So the cup is a deep cup due to the loss of connective tissue. This concept has also been used in a lot of studies, which have been measuring the distance from the Bruch's membrane opening to the anterior laminar surface. And this distance has been found to be much more increased in cases of glaucoma. So besides glaucoma, the various other causes of disc cupping have been noted here. So this was a study by Rigo Diaz et al. And they have noted that around 15.8% of the cases of neuro-ophthalmic diseases could mimic glaucoma. And of these, the most common diagnoses were ischemic optic neuropathy, hereditary optic neuropathy, and compressive optic neuropathy. This was another study by Evelyn O'Neill et al. And they have noted that when a panel of experts was presented with various disc pictures, they could accurately reach a diagnosis based on the disc pictures alone only in 27% of cases of autosomal dominant optic atrophy and 16% cases of LHON. So what happens when we incorrectly diagnose these cases of neuro-ophthalmic diseases with glaucoma? It results in unnecessary treatment with AGM, resulting in a financial burden for the patient, or it may lead to a late or a misdiagnosis of a treatable intracranial tumor. So how do we differentiate these two entities? Clinical assessment, visual acuity and color vision in cases of glaucoma is usually preserved till the end stage, whereas in neuro-ophthalmic cases, there is early loss of both vision and color vision. In cases of glaucoma, ROPD is very rarely seen. Only in cases where the glaucoma is highly asymmetric would we note an RAPD, whereas in non-glaucoma cases, RAPD is often present. Optic disc in glaucoma shows very characteristic changes like vertical elongation of the cup, a deep cup, normal color of the NRR. There is focal loss of neuroretinal limb, also known as notching, positional change in vessels, also known as bionetting or splinter hemorrhages, a peripapillary beta zone, which is known to be associated with progression. And very important to note is that even in spite of having an advanced cupping, the vision might be normal or near normal. Whereas in non-glaucomatous cases, neuroretinal rim will appear pale, the cup will be shallow, there's no focal loss of NRR, no positional change of vessels, and the vision loss is often much greater than the cupping. Visual fields in glaucoma, like we all know, shows a characteristic progression. And in cases of neuro-ophthalmic diseases, we might either see a hemianopia or a centrocecal scotoma or an altitudinal defect. Important to note is that the fields always correlate with the disc in cases of glaucoma, whereas in neuro-ophthalmic cases, they may not correlate with cupping. Imaging in these cases has a limited role from my knowledge, although Dr. Rupak Roy will further highlight this. Basically, there's an overlap in structural measurement, and it may not be very useful in myopic patients due to the presence of artifacts. There have been a few papers on this, and this was one study which compared the optic nerve morphology in compressive and glaucomatous optic neuropathy, and they noted that there is no laminar remodeling detected in patients with compressive optic neuropathy. This was another paper of LHON where it was compared with NTG, and they noted that NTG patients had a much deeper cup compared to LHON patients. And when HRT was used, around 73% of the patients of LHON were wrongly diagnosed as glaucomatous. So how do we avoid misdiagnosing, and when do we take a decision that this patient needs to be neuroimaged? So here, this article tells us that when the glaucoma specialists, trained specialists were presented with these pictures and the perimetry findings of neuro-ophthalmic patients, they ended up misdiagnosing around 25% of these cases. And conversely, around 12% of glaucomatous neuropathies were misdiagnosed as neuro-ophthalmologic. So even experts might sometimes find it difficult to differentiate these conditions. This was a paper by Ike Ahmed, wherein 6% of patients with with NTG were found to have relevant intracranial compressive lesions, and all 4 of these had glaucomatous visual field defects. So, is there a guideline? Yes, we have a guideline, and these are the current recommendations that we know of when we should take a decision to image a patient with a suspicious disc and normal pressure. So, but are these findings 100% specific for neuroophthalmic diseases? No, they are not. So this was a paper by Greenfield et al. And they have noted that the specificity of these signs like vertically aligned field defects, optic nerve pallor, and excess of cupping, young age, are only 77 to 93% specific for non-glaucomatous cupping. So coming back to this paper by Chaudhary et al., they have highlighted various factors that had probably led to the misdiagnosis of the cases that they had presented in their paper. Of these, the most common were that most of the physicians had failed to look at the pupils. Some of them had failed to look at the other optic disc features besides the cup disc ratio. Some of them did not further investigate. When they saw a cupping of the disc, they directly started the patient on treatment. And sometimes the fields and the acuity and the vision and the optic disc findings were not correlated. So the problem here is that we do not have one sign or one test which can accurately or 100% tell us that this patient is NTG or this patient is a neuroophthalmic disease. So what do we do in such cases? We would recommend an approach which is as follows. Always maintain a high index of suspicion. Do a good clinical evaluation, use a combination of differentiating features, and whenever something seems to be not fitting or the visual acuity and the fields do not follow a particular pattern on follow-up, do not hesitate to image. Thank you.